All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to proceed with the evidence in this case from the state.
Thank you, Judge. At this time, the state will call Mr. Mac Albensley.
Just raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and have a seat.
Sir, please state your name and spell it for the record.
Matthew Albenzi. It's Mathew
And Mr. Albenze, what neighborhood do you live in?
Satilla Shores.
How long have you lived in Satilla Shores?
Since July '89. 32 years, 33 years. 32 years. 31 years.
All right. And what's the specific address that you live at?
309 Jones Road.
What do you do for a living?
Calibration technician.
And what are the normal hours that you work? Like, when do you leave to go to work? And when do you leave to go to work? And when do you come home?
Leave around 5:30, 5:40 in the morning. Get home around 4:30, 4:45 in the afternoon.
Right. So prior to February of 2020,
Ooh, we got, is that from your mic?
I don't know. It appears it might be. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
There we go.
that may be it. You just push that maybe just a little bit away from you. Okay, let's try.
Let's try that.
Let's fix it. Okay.
Thank you, Judge. So prior to February of 2020, did you know Mr. William Roddie Bryan?
We'd met before. Yeah.
All right. How many times had you met before?
Just casual passing at a hardware store or maybe up at Zachary's.
How would you describe your relationship with him?
Just an acquaintance.
Had you ever been to his home in Satilla Shores?
No.
Had he ever been to your house in Satilla Shores?
No.
Did you even know where he lived?
Had an idea.
With regard to Greg McMichael, did you know Mr. Greg McMichael prior to February of 2020?
Yes.
How did you know him?
Just neighbors.
Had he ever been over to your house?
No.
Did you ever been over to his house for like dinner or anything?
No.
And Travis McMichael, did you know him?
Yes.
And how did you know Travis McMichael?
Same type of relationship. Just neighbors. We talk in the driveway. I think most of the time we ever spoke with each other in the driveway, just friendly conversation about, trucks and boats and fishing and stuff like that.
All right. And back in February of 2020, you knew where the McMichaels lived.
Yes.
Now, with regard to Mr. Ahmaud Arbery, did you know him?
No.
Had you ever seen him in the neighborhood before?
No.
Had you ever seen him, period, before?
No.
Now, in relationship to your house, where is the open unsecured construction site at 220 Satilla Drive?
It's at the end of the street I live on.
And how long has that location been under construction?
2.5 years maybe at that point. I'm not sure.
Okay, so at that point, 2.5 years. What was there before it became a construction site?
This is the vacant lot.
So I'm going to show you what I've marked as State's Exhibits 284 and 285. Take a look at 284 and 285 and see if you're able to recognize what's depicted in those photographs.
Yep.
Are they fair and accurate?
Yeah.
At this time, the state would tender into evidence 284 and 285.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
They're admitted.
So Mr. Albenzi, you'll be able to see it here on your screen. at 284. What is the jury looking at here?
That's the Mr. English's house, just above the garbage cans there.
Right here?
Yeah, and that and to the right.
So all of this being English's property.
Yes.
All right. And so where are we kind of standing looking down the street?
You'd be about at the end of my driveway, I think, approximately.
All right. And what road is this road, right?
Jones Road.
Now, whose house is this?
Kenny Wade.
What, do you know what Mr. Wade does?
No, I think he's retired.
So then looking at 285, is this just a further close-up shot?
Yes.
Great. It's just our court reporter needs to take down everything we're saying. Thanks. Now, do you know Larry English personally?
We've met, yeah. I introduced myself. It's my mailbox. There's the white mailbox here. So I walk down there every afternoon and check my mail.
So that's your mailbox?
Yep.
Okay. So how many times do you think you've met or talked with Larry English prior to February 23rd of 2020?
Half a dozen, 10 times, maybe a dozen, I'm not sure.
He ever come to your house? You ever go to his house?
No, I talked to him either at the mailbox or, spoke to him in his backyard. He had an excavator putting some concrete on the riverbank, just like that, yeah.
All right. And had you ever seen various people at his open unsecured construction site?
Maybe some contractors every now and then.
Any looky-loos, people just stopping by to look at the property? No, you didn't see that.
No, I did not see that.
Okay. And from about October of 2019 through February of 2020, what condition was the open unsecured construction site? Was it like fully open that you could walk in?
Yeah, no garage doors. I don't think the front door was on it.
Were there any no trespassing signs up?
I don't know.
Now, at some point in time when you talked with Larry English, did he show you a video? Did he show you a video of someone who had come onto his property at night?
Yes.
And what was that person doing?
I was looking around, walking around on his dock.
The dock video.
Yes.
Did he show you any other videos other than the dock video?
No.
Do you remember what day it was that he showed this video to
No.
you? No?
Maybe October, November time frame of 19.
And at any point in time, did Larry English talk to you about items that had been stolen off of his boat, like some fishing equipment and a cooler?
Yes.
All right, and who did he suspect had taken those things?
He didn't really say. He just told me there had been some contractors
I
work.
object to hearsay from Mr. English, what he told this witness.
Sustained.
Now, did you repeat what Mr. English had told you to anyone else?
Not that I recall, no.
All right, I'm going to direct your attention, Mr. Albenze, specifically to February 23rd, 2020, approximately 1 p.m. in the afternoon. Tell the jury what you were doing that day.
I was running a log splitter in my front yard, splitting wood.
And how were you dressed?
I had on boots and gloves and overalls.
What did you see?
I just stood up to move some wood, and I noticed Mr. Arbery standing in the front yard of that house.
Now, at that point in time, did you know his name?
No.
Okay. So he was a stranger to you?
Yes.
All right. So you saw him standing in front of the house.
Yes.
How was he dressed?
Maybe a t-shirt and shorts.
Did he have any bags with him?
No, not that I recall, no.
Backpack on him?
No.
What did you see the young man do?
He was just standing there looking around. It's a good distance away.
So what did you decide to do? What happened next?
What came to mind was Mr. English's video. Something that looked like that on his dock at night. So I shut the splitter off, grabbed my phone, walked down to the corner.
And did you go in the house and get something else too?
Yeah, I had a pistol in my pocket.
Okay. So you got your phone, you got your gun, and you walked down to the end of the drive, or the end of the street.
Right.
All right. So on State's Exhibit 285, where did you stand?
Behind that oak tree next to the stop sign.
The right in here?
Behind the oak tree.
Like right here?
Yeah. Well, behind it, but the tree was between myself and the house.
Ah, so more like right here.
Yeah.
Got it. And what did you do then?
And I saw someone moving around inside the house, so I pushed the send button, called Glenn County Police.
All right, so when you hit the send button, what number did you dial?
The 7800 number.
What's the 7800 number?
It's the Glenn County Police Department.
So you didn't dial 911?
No,
All right. Why didn't you dial 911?
I did not see an emergency.
So you dialed the non-emergency Glenn County number, and were you connected to an operator?
I was.
Have you had the opportunity to listen to that 911 call?
I've heard it a time or two, yeah.
Okay. And you and I have met before, right?
Right,
And
yes.
I played for you?
Yes, you did.
Okay. And at that time, was it a fair and accurate depiction of what you said to 911?
Evidently, it's a recording, so, yeah.
All right. So, Your Honor, at this time, the state will tender into evidence. Let me make sure I get the right number. State's Exhibit 143.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Okay. State will publish.
Plymouth Litigations Operator Smith.
Hey, this is Fellow Avenger. I'm about to steal tool. There's a great place out there. There's a guy in the house right now. The house under construction.
Okay, do you have your address or that house's address?
Right there at 219 or 220 Secilla Drive.
And you said someone's breaking into it right now?
No, it's all open. It's under construction. And he's running right now. There he goes right now.
Okay, what is he doing?
He's running down the street. Oh,
Okay. Okay, that's fine. I'll get them out there. I just need to know what he was doing wrong. Was he just on the premises and not supposed to be?
And you've been caught on camera a bunch before at night. Kind of an ongoing thing out here. The man just built in the house. He's got parties. He's up there. He's not going to finish it.
Okay, that's fine. And you said it was a male in a black t-shirt?
A white t-shirt. Black guy, white t-shirt. And he's done back there. He's done running back there. You never knew.
Okay, and
My front yard.
what was your name, sir?
Max.
Okay, and your phone number?
258-467.
258. What was the last four?
465. I'm at 309 Jones Road.
Okay, I'll go ahead and put it in and have somebody come out there and check it out, okay?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Were you able to see Mr. Arbery inside the house when you were standing behind kind of the oak tree area?
Yeah.
Could you tell what he was doing inside the house?
No.
Now, you can't read minds, right?
Nope.
All right. So you have no idea what he was doing inside the house.
No, ma'am.
And do you have any idea why he ran from the house?
No, I don't.
Now, after you hung up with 911, what happened next?
Walked back to my house.
Do you recall at all walking down the street a little further in front of, I guess, Subi Lawrence on one side and Diego Perez on the other side, down that street a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember making any sort of motion?
I saw in the video, there he goes.
And who are you doing that to?
I was just thinking to myself, run on down the street.
Were you intending to communicate to anyone in particular at that time?
No.
And after you stood in the street and made the arm motion, what did you do then?
Went home.
At any point in time, did you call Greg or Travis McMichael?
No.
Did you communicate with them in any way, shape, or form?
No.
After you went home, what happened next?
After a few minutes, I heard gunshots.
How many gunshots did you hear?
3.
What did you do once you'd heard those 3 gunshots?
I got my bicycle out of the shop and rode down around the corner.
You say down the corner, where'd you go?
Down to Satilla Drive, left.
So you came down Jones and then went down Satilla.
Right.
Is that the same way that Mr. Arbery had run?
Yes.
What'd you find?
I saw a police car, saw Mr. Arbery laying on the street. I saw it's Greg and Travis there.
What'd you do?
I stopped and went home. As it's kind of a shocking scene,
And did you ride your bicycle back home?
I did.
Later that evening, were you contacted by officers from the Glenn County Police Department?
Yeah,
And did you speak with them at that time?
I suppose, yeah, I did.
Do you recall that at all?
Not really.
At that point in time, just to put it politely, had you had an adult beverage or cocktail at that point in time?
Several, yeah.
Now, have you personally ever been the victim of property theft within Satilla Shores?
My daughter's car was broken into, 20 years ago maybe. It's been a long time ago.
But nothing in 2019 or 2020?
No.
And do you subscribe to the Satilla Shores Facebook page?
Yeah.
Do you occasionally post there?
Yeah.
And do neighbors post about their concerns about crime in the neighborhood on that Facebook page?
Yeah, they did.
And is that normal for people to be concerned about property thefts and crime in a neighborhood?
Objection is asking this witness to speculate what other people feel.
Sustained.
Were you concerned about property thefts in Satilla Shores?
Of course,
Why?
it's our home.
Now, did you have any personal knowledge about any burglaries that had taken place in Satilla Shores in 2019 or 2020?
Car break-ins, you mean? That,
So we'll talk about, did you know about some car break-ins?
yeah.
And how did you find out about the car break-ins?
It's on the Facebook page.
Had anybody actually personally spoken to you about their car break-in, like one-on-one, and you interviewed them and you got information about it?
No.
And I failed, I think, to show you State's Exhibit 127. 127. So, Mr. Albenzi, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 127, see if you're able to recognize this particular image.
I do.
All right, and is it fair and accurate?
Was then, yeah.
All right. At this time, the state would tender into evidence State's Exhibit 127.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
It's admitted.
So with regard to State's Exhibit 127, go ahead and orient the jury. Where are we?
You're facing south on Satilla Drive.
And so when you were standing behind the oak tree, was it about here?
Yes,
Right. And you said this was fair and accurate at the time, meaning back in spring of 2020.
right. The porta potties are gone now.
But it was there back then.
Yeah.
If I may have one moment. Mr. Albenzi, I'm going to pass you over to the defense. They may have some questions for you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Root.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
One.
Excuse me one minute. Mr. Albenzi, we've met before.
Yes,
We met about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago now,
I suppose.
out near your house.
Yes,
Okay. We talked about the testimony you're giving here today.
yes, sir.
Okay. You don't want to be here.
Rather be elsewhere, yes.
Almost anywhere else, probably. This has been very difficult for you, correct?
Yeah,
It's caused you personally some problems as a result of your role in calling 911.
yes, it is.
You've had some concerns at work.
Yes,
You've had concerns about your neighborhood, Satilla Shores,
yes,
and even personal attacks on you, phone calls, things like that,
recently, yes.
recently. Even though all you did was call 911.
Not 911, but yeah.
The non-emergency number.
Right.
Okay. And that's put you in a difficult spot in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's put me in a spot. I wouldn't say it's really difficult, but it is something I'm not used to.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your your call to Glenn County Police Department for a second and orient the jury a little bit. When you were in your yard cutting the wood, you'd already gotten most of the tree done. You were continuing to split logs from a fallen tree in your yard.
Right.
Right? You're out in your front yard, and you can see down from your house down towards Larry English's house.
Right.
Now, you had talked to Larry English before, right?
Yes.
You said 6 to 12 times, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
You share mailboxes with him.
Well, it's
I don't mean the same mailboxes.
same area, yeah.
So there's a group of mailboxes at the end of the road. Right here, behind the stop sign.
Right.
Okay.
4 or 5 mailboxes.
And multiple neighbors have to go to that spot to get their mail every day.
Yes.
You have to walk down Jones to the corner of Jones and Satilla to get your mail.
Yes.
And of course, Mr. English has a mailbox there as well.
I don't think he has a mailbox yet.
Oh, okay. He didn't have one yet, but that's where you would see him and talk to him occasionally.
Yes.
Okay. And on those occasions when you would see him, y'all would discuss, how's the construction coming, how's things going, right?
Right.
You knew he had a heart problem,
Yeah.
so you knew his health was impaired.
Yeah.
You knew he was building the house as kind of a second home for him.
Yes.
You knew he lived some distance away.
Right.
And you knew he stored valuables on the property.
I suppose.
You knew he had a boat on the property.
Right.
You knew he had a camper on the property.
Yeah.
You knew he stayed in the camper when he would come to work on the house.
Right.
And the garage where he kept the boat, he had a regular car garage, but he also had an RV garage, the bigger garage,
Right.
to fit his boat or an RV or whatever he wanted to put in it.
Yes.
Okay. He had talked to you about this intruder in his house, right?
Yes.
And he even went so far as to show you the video of a black male behind his house on his dock.
Right.
And you understood that on the dock was a boat on a hoist.
I don't know if I can't tell you what was on the, I don't know the arrangement of his dock, no.
Okay, so you weren't aware there was a boat back there?
Right. I couldn't tell you if the boat was on the dock or in the garage or where at the time.
Did you know if Mr. English had multiple boats?
Yeah, I think he had 2 or 3 boats
Okay. That he stored on the property?
from time to time.
Even though it was open and unsecured, this house, it was still his property as you understood it.
Right.
He wasn't inviting people to come onto the property when he's not there, right?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
This male he showed you in the video, did Mr. English tell you he was authorized to be on the dock?
No.
Okay. As far as you understood, he was not authorized to be on the dock.
That's right.
And you understood that even though the house had no doors on it, it was still Mr. English's property, right?
Yes.
And he could decide who's allowed to come and not come on the property.
Yes.
You were aware that, and you even tell the Glenn County Police, this guy, meaning the man you're seeing on the property on February 23rd, has been to the house multiple times.
And that's what I said on the call, but it might have been the heat of the moment. And, I can't say who it was, that guy, or just somebody that looks like it's what I probably meant to say.
Okay, so you didn't know who that male was standing in the yard when you looked down Jones.
No.
But to you, he looked like the guy you had seen in the video.
Right.
And you knew that this guy who you saw in the video had actually been to the house not just that one time, but a bunch of times.
Right.
Again, you didn't know if it was the same guy, but it was enough to pique your interest to walk down Jones.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In fact, you tell the Glenn County non-emergency number he's been caught on the camera a bunch before at night. That's what you said in the call we just heard.
That's what I said, yeah.
Okay. It's kind of an ongoing thing out here
It had been.
from that guy, or at least the guy you suspected.
I can't say it was that guy, just somebody that fit that description.
Okay. So you felt like this guy had been there before, you saw a video of it, and he's here again. Or at least you suspected he's here again.
I suppose.
Okay. And that's what you told the police.
Yeah.
Okay. You also told the police that the guy's building a house, the guy being Larry English, and he's
Right.
got heart issues.
Right.
Again, information you got from Mr. English.
Right.
Okay. And you knew of Mr. English's frustration at this guy, or the guy you saw in the video, not being caught.
I don't really know, but we'd call it frustration. I can't speak to the man's state of mind. No.
Did he ever explain to you how frustrated he was?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I mean, nobody's happy when somebody snoops around in their stuff, so.
Right. I mean,
But
he
no,
was not happy this man was on his dock.
I suppose not.
Express that to you?
I don't recall.
You say to the Glenn County police operator, we've had some break-ins out here, right?
Right.
One of the first things you said, this is Matt Albenzi, we've had some break-ins out here.
Right.
Okay. Now, what you're talking about is what Ms. Dunikoski asked you. You were aware from the Facebook page that there was property crime in the neighborhood.
Yes.
And people were posting about it on the Facebook page and next door page if you're aware of that.
Right.
Okay. Do you subscribe to both?
I think I logged into that, but I can't get back into it. It's just kind of wonky. No.
Okay. But people had shared their own personal experience with property crimes in Satilla Shores.
Right.
And it seemed to be an ongoing problem in 2019, now 2020.
It was, yeah.
Around the same time that this man that you saw on the video was coming into Larry English's house.
Right.
And in fact, you were, not only were you aware of it, but many people in the neighborhood were aware of this intruder in Larry English's house.
Same objection Mr. Reed did to me. What other people are aware of would be speculation on this person's, on Mr. Albenza's part.
Sustained.
Did you ever tell the GBI when you were interviewed that everyone in the neighborhood is aware of it?
Not a prior consistent statement or prior inconsistent statement. And once again, him saying it to someone else does not get it out of speculation on his part.
The question is simply whether he was,
Told the GBI.
whether he told the GBI that. Okay, that's okay. Go ahead.
Do you remember being interviewed by the GBI?
I do.
Do you remember telling the GBI that you're aware of the guy back at the house and everyone in the neighborhood was aware of it?
I can't say everybody, but it was, people that were posting things, neighbors talk to neighbors, so I suppose most neighbors were aware that there were break-ins occurring.
And not just break-ins, but break-ins at Larry English's house.
I don't know who knew about that, but
You may not know who in particular were aware of it, but you told the GBI that everyone in the neighborhood was aware of. And I understand that's a figure of speech,
right.
but you told the GBI that,
Okay. Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
Okay. You were also aware that not only was this black male on the dock and at Larry English's house on multiple occasions, but that things were missing from Mr. English's house.
Right.
In fact, you were aware that electronics were stolen and a cooler was stolen.
Objection to what Larry English told him. I know the form of the question is you're aware of this, but the only way Mr. Albenzi would be aware of this is if it was hearsay coming from Mr. English. And I believe Mr. Rubin previously objected to my asking this witness what Mr. Larry English told him. So anything he's aware of from Mr. English would come from Mr. English, would be hearsay.
And I'm not asking, I'm not offering it for the truth of the matter, whether the items were actually stolen, but to go to this witness's knowledge and to explain why he did what he did on February 23rd.
I understand it's not being admitted for the truth of the statement itself, just to explain the witness. Go ahead.
Okay. So, Mr. Albenzi, you had knowledge, you were aware that items were stolen from Mr. English's house.
Yes,
And items were in his boat stored at the house.
right,
And those items were electronics, right?
yep,
And a Yeti cooler.
yep,
And so you were aware of, well, let me back up. To your knowledge, those items had never been recovered.
I do not know.
Okay. Were you present at Mr. English's house on February 11th, 2020, when police arrived at the house?
I think I walked down, saw the blue lights, you know, they flash all over the place. So I went down there to see what was going on,
And this is at night.
right?
It's dark out.
Yeah,
Same, it was dark from the video you saw. I'm sorry, I'm going back to the previous video from Mr. English's house. It was dark that time too.
I can't remember if there was lighting. I don't know if there's a lamp back there. What I don't recall.
But it was at night.
It was at night.
Okay, so now February 11th, 2020, you see blue lights in front of Mr. English's house at 220 Satilla Drive, correct?
Right.
You were curious.
I was.
You knew about Mr. English's previous problems
Yeah.
with theft at his house, right? So you went down to see what was going on.
Right.
Did you see Travis McMichael down there?
Can't remember if he was there or not. Yeah, I think he was there.
Okay. Did you see Greg McMichael there?
I don't remember.
Okay. But you do remember Travis.
Pretty sure.
Do you remember talking to any officers there?
I think I do remember talking to one officer.
After you went down there on the 11th, did you have any more conversations with Larry English about his house?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did you ever talk to Subi Lawrence about the thefts in the neighborhood?
Possibly.
You're friends with Miss Lawrence, or at least neighborhood acquaintances?
Yeah, neighborly friends.
Diego Perez,
Yeah,
Ronnie Olson,
yeah.
and Ronnie lives at the corner.
Right. That's
was-
Ronnie's garbage cans there.
Right, so the property, the oak tree where you stood behind to make your call, this is right in Ronnie Olson's front yard.
That's right.
And if Mr. English is 220 Satilla Drive, Ronnie Olson is 219 Satilla, across from Mr. English.
Yes, he is.
Okay. Do you ever talk to Brooke Perez
Occasionally.
about theft in the neighborhood?
I don't know what all we talked about.
Okay. The man you saw in the videos that Larry English showed you, and the man you saw on February 23rd, 2020, you had not seen either of those men before in the neighborhood.
No.
Okay. You never saw either man, if they're different, to your knowledge, jogging in the neighborhood. Now, how long you've lived there? 32 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Not aware of that man or a man fitting that description jogging in the neighborhood.
No.
Okay. The man that you saw when you first saw him on February 23rd was not jogging.
No.
In fact, he was just standing in the yard.
That's right.
Did you see him look around?
It seemed like he was just looking around.
Okay. Wasn't bent over, out of breath?
No.
Wasn't tying his shoes, lacing them up?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay. You didn't know if that man was armed or not?
No.
Okay. Before you went down to make your phone call at the corner of Satilla and Jones, you grabbed two things.
Yep.
Cell phone
Yep.
and your 9mm.
That's right.
Put the 9mm in your pocket.
I did.
That's for your protection.
Yep.
Because you just didn't know what was going on there.
Nope.
Okay. You called 911. You called the non-emergency number. And as you're calling, you're looking at the house.
Right.
And you see a person in the house.
I saw the person, then I called.
Okay, saw a person through the window of the house.
Right.
The window, I'm trying not to get in anybody's way. The front of the house is over here. Here's the garages, right?
Right.
The window's over here.
Right.
You saw the man that you suspected as being an intruder walking through the house through those windows.
Right.
At some point, you stepped out from behind the oak tree,
Right.
and that man came out and then took off.
Yeah.
You suspected he saw you, and that's why he took off.
I don't know.
I know you don't know, but you suspected it.
I don't know why he took off running. I don't know if he saw me or not.
You told Diego Perez you suspected he saw you,
Okay then.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you told the GBI that you suspected he saw you. At least was possible in your mind, and you felt some guilt over that
I did.
because you felt like you put into motion these events that turned tragic.
I thought maybe if he hadn't seen me, he wouldn't have run away. I don't know.
Right. And that, of course, it still weighs heavy on your heart.
Yes.
Okay. After while you were making your call, and you watched him run off into the neighborhood, right? You continued to walk down Satilla, past Mr. Wade's house, who's right there,
Right.
to at least in front of Diego Perez's house, right?
Right.
So that's 2 houses down from Larry English's house.
Right.
And that's where you made your motion,
Right.
right? At that point, you're only 2 houses from the McMichael's house, correct?
2 or 3, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. Prior to Ahmaud Arbery, the man we now know to be Ahmaud Arbery, running out of the house, did you ever see him through the window duck down?
I don't know. I don't know.
You don't recall?
I don't recall.
Okay. Excuse me 1 minute, Mr. Albanese. Thank you, Judge. That's all I have, Mr. Albanese.
Hold on just a second, sir. Anything from the other defendants?
Yes, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Albenzi.
Morning.
I'm Jessica Burton. I am co-counsel for Roddie Bryan. First, I understand you might know my co-counsel, Kevin Goff.
I helped my brother clean some trees up at his yard after one of the hurricanes several years ago.
Okay, so then you have not spoken with Mr. Goff then about your testimony today?
No.
Okay. Did you speak with Roddie Bryan on February 23rd, 2020 prior to the incident?
No.
Okay. And at that point, you hadn't spoken with him for several years at that point, is that correct?
I suppose that's correct.
Okay. And on February 23rd, 2020, prior to the incident, you also did not see him,
No.
correct? Okay. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Any redirect from the state?
Yes, Judge. So when we're talking about what you're aware of with regard to Larry English, you were aware that he suspected his contractors of stealing the items off the boat.
I wouldn't say he suspected them, but maybe that was a possibility.
And how'd you learn about that possibility?
I mean, we spoke about it.
And you're aware that he had no idea if the items were stolen off the boat while the boat was at that construction site or somewhere else?
I have no idea.
Okay. And you don't know what's in the mind of the other neighbors within the Satilla Shores neighborhood, do you?
No.
You have no idea who knows what about Larry English's property, do you?
No.
And the video he showed you was the one on the dock, and I think you said between October and November?
Yeah.
Okay. I think defense counsel asked you if you were friends with Subi Lawrence.
Right.
Okay. But I think it was unclear. Did you talk to Subi Lawrence at all about Larry English's house?
I don't recall. We don't speak very often.
Okay. And Diego Perez, you know him.
Right.
Did you talk with him about Larry English's house?
I may have, but I couldn't tell you what the conversation was or when it was or what it was about. But I mean, we talk about these things, you know, neighbors share concerns about what's going on.
Okay. But you don't have any specific recollections of these things?
No.
Okay. And Ronnie Olson is one of your good friends, right?
His buddy, yeah.
Okay. And at one point in time, did you and Mr. Olson believe that the crime that was happening at Satilla Shores was due to a homeless guy under a bridge?
I don't know. I heard people talk about homeless people under the bridge. I never saw them. Don't know.
Okay. But this was something else that the people in the neighborhood were talking about, right?
Right.
Okay. And that homeless guy under the bridge, he was a suspect in the 2019 entering autos, right?
I don't know.
Well, did you suspect him?
No. I mean, I don't even know if there was a homeless guy under the bridge, so no.
So this is all just rumor and innuendo going around.
I suppose. Yeah.
Now, you just testified, you don't know if Mr. Arbery saw you or not from inside the house where you were standing under the tree, right?
No, I don't.
Okay. And you told Diego Perez that you didn't know whether he saw you or not. Is that what you told Diego Perez?
I don't remember what I told Diego.
Okay. And the direction Mr. Arbery ran when he left the house, he went towards the McMichael house, right?
Yes.
Okay. If he'd gone the other way, where would he have gone?
Out towards Highway 17.
Out towards Highway 17.
Right.
Out of Satilla Shores.
Right.
I'll pass the witness if there's any recross.
Any recalls?
Hello, Mr. Albanzi.
Hello.
Just a quick question.
Objection.
It's two separate defendants.
Pardon me?
Right, there were no questions and
I can do it.
Okay, I'll let Mr. Rubin do it then.
I'm confused. Frank's face.
Okay. I'm confused, but I guess it doesn't matter.
Well, it does. What we had was a cross by Mr. Rubin, no cross, and then we'll discuss it at break and just make sure everybody's on the same page with how we're operating. Go ahead.
Mr. Albanzi, the direction you saw the man we now know as Ahmaud Arbery run was to your left, right?
Yes.
Away from the entrance to Satilla Shores Highway 17.
Yes.
You're on the phone calling the police to come to the neighborhood and check this out. The police would be coming from the direction of Highway 17,
Yes.
coming into the neighborhood.
Right.
Going down the street, again, in the direction that Mr. Arbery ran.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Anything from Mr. Bryan?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, sir. You may step down. I know with the police witnesses, they were subject to recall. Is he subject to recall?
Yes, he is subject to
All right.
recall.
You are released for the day. You are subject to recall.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Trying to work through timing.
Yes, Judge. I believe our next witness will be Stephen Lowry, and I think he's going to take a while.
I would say so. Maybe this would be a good time to put another matter on the record.
We could get into it for an hour and then break for lunch, whichever the court pleases.
I was planning to break. I was thinking around noon. I think that works from a timing standpoint. I don't plan to get into a full hour. So that being the case, I plan to break the witness in about 30 minutes or so.
That's fine, Judge.
All right, state's next witness.
The state called Stephen Lowry.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do. Go ahead and have a seat. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please go ahead and introduce yourself to the jury. Tell them your name and spell it for the court reporter.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Stephen Lowry. It's STEPHAN LOWREY.
And Mr. Lowry, how are you currently employed?
I do contract work at a local business for computer repairs.
Okay.
Part-time.
Part-time. Are you also in school at the moment?
Yes, ma'am. I'm a full-time student.
Okay. And what are you studying?
Network operations and security. It's more computer stuff.
Computer stuff. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you held your current job?
I started there in May.
In May of
This year.
2021?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What were you doing before that?
I worked at FedEx for a short while as a courier, and prior to that I was in law enforcement.
Okay. Where were you employed when you were in law enforcement?
Originally with BPD, Brunswick Police Department, and then Glenn County PD.
How long were you with Brunswick PD?
I think roughly like 4.5 or 5 years.
Okay. Do you recall when you started with them?
Late 2012,
2012. Okay, so about 4 to 5 years, you said?
somewhere in there, yes ma'am.
Okay. And what did you do when you were with Brunswick PD?
Mostly patrol. I was assigned to narcotics for a while and a aggressive patrol division.
Okay. So mostly dealing with like drug cases, narcotics.
Yes ma'am.
Okay. After you left Brunswick PD, where did you go?
I went to Glenn County. I was already working out of that building because we shared an office. It was a joint drug unit.
Okay.
And I remained working as a drug investigator for the county for another, I think, 8 or 9 months before I went back to patrol.
Okay. Do you remember when you started in terms of the year with Glenn County PD?
I don't for sure.
Okay. All right. So when you started with Glenn County PD, what was your position there?
A narcotics investigator.
Okay. I want to turn your attention to February 23rd, 2020. Okay.
Okay.
Were you with Glenn County PD at that time?
I was.
Okay. What was your position at that time?
Criminal investigator.
Okay. And were you with a specific department?
Yes, ma'am. The Glenn County PD.
Okay. Department within that agency?
Division. The Criminal Investigation Division.
Okay. All right. And can you just please tell the jurors what were your primary duties?
Investigating crimes that surpassed, I guess, what patrol officers could handle with their equipment and their training.
Okay. And were you post-certified at that time?
Yes.
Does that essentially mean that you had arrest powers under Georgia law?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before February 23rd of 2020, had you worked homicide cases?
I'd assisted with some, but never any of my own.
Never any of your own?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember how many you had assisted with?
Not
like
many.
a ballpark number?
Maybe between 1 and 5. I don't think we had many.
Okay, so between 1 and 5 homicide cases.
Yes, maybe that's very, very rough.
Okay, and homicide meaning someone's dead.
Well, I can think of one that I did work on just in the sense of someone being dead, but it was a drug sale kind of thing.
Okay, all right. And were you the lead on any of these homicide cases?
The drug overdose case I was, but that wasn't kind of what I was thinking of with homicide. I've
Okay.
never had a homicide involving prior to this, any sort of, I guess, violent act, touching,
Okay.
shooting, or anything like that.
Okay, so no shooting homicide. Is that correct?
Yes.
And no like stabbing homicide.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So did you become, actually, strike that. How many citizens arrest cases had you worked prior to February 23rd, 2020?
None.
None. Okay. Did you become involved in the investigation into the death of Ahmaud Arbery?
I did.
Can you tell us how you became involved in that?
Yes, I was the on-call investigator that day. I was called out to the scene.
And which day are we talking about?
February 23rd of 2020.
Okay. So do you remember what time you were called out?
I don't. I think it was somewhat early afternoon.
Okay, so early afternoon.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you remember who called you out?
Believe it was Sergeant Oliver.
Sergeant Oliver. Okay. So when you're called out, what do you do?
I got dressed in my uniform, got into my car, and responded to the scene.
Okay. When you say uniform, describe that for us.
At the time, it was, for us in CID, it was khaki BDU pants and a green polo
Okay.
with a county badge and, yeah.
I'm sorry, I spoke over you. Go ahead.
Just a green polo with a county badge.
Okay. Were you wearing any kind of body cam?
No.
Okay. Explain why not.
The body cams we were using a fix with magnets. I wasn't wearing a plate carrier that had my magnet inside of it, so I wasn't recording.
Okay. And what car were you driving? Did you drive to the scene?
It would have been an unmarked county car. I don't remember the make and model, but it was probably a Ford Fusion.
Okay. And when you say unmarked, what does that mean?
It's equipped with police equipment like lights, sirens, all that, but it's unmarked. It doesn't have Glenn County PD markings or any police markings.
Okay. And was that car equipped with dash cam?
No.
Okay. So no dash cam on that day?
Correct.
Okay. So where was this scene located that you were called out to?
In Satilla Shores here in Glenn County.
Okay. And when you arrived on scene, tell the jury what it looked like. What did you see?
I arrived on scene. I saw the decedent laying in the roadway with caution tape or police crime scene tape surrounding him. I spoke to Officer Roberts, who kind of briefed me on the information that she had gathered at that point.
Okay. So you spoke to Officer Roberts. Did Officer Roberts hand anything over to you?
She did.
What did she hand over?
It was a thumb drive that was containing video footage from I think Diego Perez.
Okay. And did you come to find out that there was a certain cell phone that was in another officer's car?
I did.
Okay. Whose cell phone was that?
That was Mr. William Bryan's cell phone, and it
Okay.
was in Sergeant Leska's car.
Okay. And what did you do after that?
I spoke briefly with Mr. Bryan, who was on scene.
Okay.
I was told by another officer that he had already given consent for us to view a video that he had taken on his phone. I spoke to him and just reconfirmed that verbal consent, and I viewed it on scene. And
Okay.
then I spoke with him a little longer. I got him to agree to come back to Glenn County headquarters for an interview so that we could speak to him a little bit more in depth and do a download of the phone. He agreed.
Where was Mr. Bryan on scene when you spoke with him?
He was standing on the corner of, I believe it was Holmes and Burford, next to a bicycle and a tree.
Okay, all right. And just going back for a moment, did you recognize any, other than the law enforcement officers who you obviously knew because you worked with them, did you recognize anyone else on scene that day?
Yes, I recognized Greg McMichael.
Okay, and do you see him in court today? And if you need to stand up, you can do that.
No. Is that him there?
Where are you pointing to?
To my right of the woman in the yellow shirt. I haven't seen him in a while. He looks a little different.
He looks a little different.
I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay. And what color is he wearing for the record?
Blue jacket and I think a blue tie.
Okay. Your Honor, let the record reflect that he has just identified Greg McMichael. So how did you recognize Greg McMichael?
I had seen him before coming to the police department I always assumed he was delivering subpoenas, but I'd seen him coming in the back door carrying papers sometimes, and I knew that he was an investigator for the Glenn DA's office, so.
Okay. And what was your relationship with him, if any?
There wasn't one. I mean, maybe, hey man, as I pass him, if I happen to be coming in as he's going out or something.
Okay. All right. Did you all ever kind of go over to each other's houses or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Do you recognize William Bryan, who you
Yes.
spoke with on scene? Okay. Can you just point him out, describe what he's wearing?
It's going to be Mr. Bryan there. He's got on a blue jacket and a gray shirt. I can't make out the tie color.
Okay. Let the record reflect that he has just identified
Yes.
William Bryan. So, Mr. Lowry, so you said you got the phone and you said you viewed the video.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you spoke with Mr. Bryan to ask him if he would come to headquarters for an interview. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you spoke with him, did you pressure him in any way to talk to you?
No.
Okay. Did
I will
you?
object. We can put that in context. When and where is this taking place?
I can ask specifically. Sure. So the questions I'm asking you now, are you still located on the scene?
Yes.
Okay, there at the intersection of Holmes and Satilla.
Yes.
And Satilla Shores, right? Okay. So at the point where you're talking to Mr. Bryan, you testified that he was near a bicycle
Yes.
there? Okay. So at that point, did you pressure him in any way to come talk to you at headquarters?
No pressure. I just asked if he would mind.
If he would mind coming to talk to you?
Something to that effect, yeah.
And what did he say?
It wasn't a problem or okay. He seemed willing to go.
Okay. Did you promise him anything of benefit, anything like that?
No.
At that point, was he under arrest?
No.
Was he detained?
No.
Was he in any kind of custody?
No.
Okay. So, what happened next?
I went back to headquarters and I conducted an interview with Mr. Bryan.
Okay. And how did Mr. Bryan get back to headquarters?
He drove. He drove his own vehicle.
He drove his own vehicle. By chance, do you recall what vehicle he was driving?
It was a Chevy Silverado. I think it was like dark gray.
You said what now?
Chevy Silverado. I think it was dark gray.
Okay. And when he got back to headquarters, where did he go for that interview?
One of our interview rooms.
Okay. And are those rooms equipped with video
Yes.
to record and audio as well?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in the beginning of your video interview, did you go over any kind of forms with Mr. Bryan?
Yes. I think I went over a consent to search form. Even though he had already given verbal consent, I think I just filled out a written form.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Lowry, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 298. Take a look at it and tell me if you recognize it.
Yes. This is the form that I filled out.
Okay. And is it a true and accurate copy of that form?
Yes.
Appear to be altered in any way?
No.
Your Honor, at this time we would tender States 298.
No objection.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Permission to publish, Judge?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, let's see if I can get this to work for me here. So, Mr. Lowry, I'm going to ask you, can you see this on your form?
Yes, ma'am.
On your monitor?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
So if you can just make sure you're projecting your voice and speaking into the microphone, can you just go ahead and read this? What does it say here at the top?
It's the Glenn County Police Department General Investigations Unit.
Okay. And I won't ask you to read all this fine print. That's the address and all that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So start from here and just read that for us.
Consent to search form, cellular phone. I just got a blank where I filled in Mr. Bryan's name, William C. Bryan. Having been advised that law enforcement officers wish to make a search of my cellular telephone under my control or custody, I hereby permit Investigator S. Lowry and any other officers designated by him or her to assist in the search of my phone. The location of the phone is listed as 157 Public Safety Boulevard. Make is an iPhone. It's a Model 8. And I didn't list the serial IMEI service, and there was no PIN. Underneath that, it says, I understand the purpose of this consent to search is for the express purpose of searching said cellular telephone for evidence relating to the crime of aggravated assault or homicide. I have not been promised a reward of any type. I have not been threatened in any manner. I freely and voluntarily give my consent to conduct said search of the above described telephone to the above officer with full understanding of my rights and actions. I understand that this consent is voluntary on my part and may be revoked at any time. Signed this 23rd day of February 2020, signed by Mr. Bryan.
Okay, and did you pressure him or force him in any way to sign that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you didn't promise him anything?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you may just, they're a little finicky today, so.
Yes, sir.
Get too close to you, may give you some feedback.
Mr. Lowry, you talked about the interview being audio and video recorded, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before coming to court today to testify, were you able to review that recording of Mr. Bryan's interview in its entirety?
Yes.
Does it appear to be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, we would tender states 195.
No objection. No objection.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Thank you. Now, in conjunction with that audio recording and video recorded interview, did you also look at the transcript prepared of that interview?
I did.
Okay. And did you look at it in its entirety?
I did.
Did it seem to match up the interview itself?
It did.
Was the wording identical?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And may I approach, Judge?
Yes.
So I'm showing you what's been marked. For the purposes of identification as States Exhibit 195A, is that the same transcript that you reviewed that we just talked about?
Yes, it looks like it is.
Okay. At this time, Judge, we would tender 195A.
No objection.
Correct.
Just for the record, Your
For
Honor.
the record. It's admitted for the record. Okay, Mr. Lowry, so let's go ahead and go through some of these statements that Mr. Bryan made to you, okay? So you have the transcript there, and I'm also going to put excerpts up on this screen right here. So you can follow in the transcript or you can follow up on the screen, okay? All right, so just starting with the basics, did Mr. Bryan tell you what he was doing on the day in question on the 23rd of February 2020 around 1 p.m. or so?
I can't read what's on the screen.
There's nothing on there right now. But you, are
Okay,
you not
'cause
able
I
to?
was looking for the page and line references.
Okay, not for this, but when I start putting it up, it should be up there.
Okay.
Okay? So did he tell you what he was doing around 1 p.m. on February 23rd, 2020?
Yes, I believe he was working on his porch or his garage or something like that.
Okay. And do you remember specifically what he said he was doing?
I can find it.
Okay, if looking at the transcript will help you, go ahead and look at that.
Yes, he did say on the front porch.
Okay, so he's working on his front porch, and did he say that something happened to kind of catch his attention?
Yes.
As he's working on his front porch?
Yes.
What did he say happened?
I looked up. Can I quote it?
Okay, let's do this. Let me direct you to the line. Okay, so go to page 4,
Yes, ma'am.
lines 11 through 12, and stop at that period there after road.
Okay. Mr. Bryan says, front porch of the house. I looked up, see a black guy running down the road.
Okay, and did he also say something about a truck nearby?
Yes.
Okay, and you don't have to quote, you can just speak from your memory of the transcript at this point.
Yes, he saw a truck paralleling or following
Okay,
the other person he identified.
as the black guy running?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, and after this, what did he do?
He said, y'all got him, like a question,
Okay, and did he say that to the black guy or to the truck?
to the truck.
Did he ever ask the black guy if he was okay?
Not that he told me.
Did he ever ask the black guy if he needed help?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So after he hollered, y'all got him, what did he do?
He went to go to his truck to assist and realized he didn't have his keys. So he went back into his house, retrieved the keys, and got in his truck and kind of joined in.
Okay. And 307 Burford, Mr. Bryan's address. What neighborhood is that located in?
It's in Satilla Shores.
Okay. So I'm going to put up here on the screen, right here. So at the point where Mr. Bryan gets in his truck, did he go out onto the road?
No. Should I read again or just my own words?
Your own words is fine.
No, he sat there for a second and kind of assessed,
Okay.
waited on Mr. Arbery to come back towards him.
Okay. And what road is directly in front of Mr. Bryan's house?
Burford.
Okay. So if you can just read here, page 5, lines 18 through 25.
Okay. So I just kind of sat there for a minute and didn't really.
I'm going to object. I think we got a matter we need to take up outside the jury.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's do this then. Ladies and gentlemen, probably at a good breaking point then for lunch. We're going to break until, since we're going to be addressing some matters before the court, probably 1 o'clock. Let's plan on 1 o'clock for the continuation of the evidence. Again, hold on a second. During the break, do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. Don't go looking for any information about the case. And again, if somebody's talking about it in your presence of hearing, please let the court know, and we'll see if we need to address that. Thank you.
All right, jury.
All right, sir, I'm going to ask that you go ahead and step down.
Yes, sir.
If I could have you back here just before 1 o'clock for continuation of evidence in the case. I remind you that you are under oath, so do not discuss your testimony with anyone during the break.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Goff.
Your Honor, it seems like it's getting increasingly more difficult for Mr. Bryan to receive a fair trial. And I'm not saying that the state is trying to make it difficult, but as a practical matter, the state is cutting these statements, and I understand the desire to satisfy the McMichael defendants and their root concerns, but the state is cutting up these statements so that they are fundamentally being changed. And then when I try and cross-examine, the answer is going to be, oh, well, we didn't have any choice, and I'm not saying that there isn't some truth to that, but we're cutting up these statements to the point where what's being presented is consciously or unconsciously misleading. We're also, instead of asking, as I thought we did the other day with the Mr. Minshew, we're not asking, directing your attention to page so-and-so, line so-and-so, do you recall what happened next? We're editorializing and we're changing the meaning of what's being said. For example, Roddie Bryan never said in the transcript that he hollered at anyone. More to the point, it's clear from the transcript itself that it was evident to Mr. Bryan that nobody could hear him. The characterization of what he's doing as hollering is unsupported by the record, it's unsupported by the transcript, and then I have to try and get into that. We're talking about seeing the black guy going by. It's not clear that he's being followed by the truck. Now, I understand the state wants to present that through other evidence. We've got the Night Owl video and so forth, but this is, for Mr. Bryan, this is a critical witness in the case. And this material is being cut up and presented in a way that's troubling. For example, Ms. Oliveira, and I'm not saying it's done intentionally, I understand the difficulty here. But for example, we've heard the words chase used, the police report used the words follow. Now all of a sudden, Mr. Bryan is saying that he joined in. Mr. Bryan never used those words. And I would point out, Your Honor, that the way all this is happening is that the state is leading former Detective Lowry through the statement. Now, if he's leading him to pages and lines, and he's simply directed to that point to present evidence to the court, that's one thing. But to be leading the witness into statements like hollered and joined in, that is not simply allowing the state to get the evidence in front of the jury. It is leading to twist the narrative in ways that I would respectfully submit, whether the state pondered it or not, are simply unfair and violative of my client's rights. And it's not that we're not trying to work through it, and maybe over lunch some of these issues will go away. And I'm not asking the court at this point to bring the jury back in and give a curative instruction. I'm not asking for any admonishments. But I would just urge the state, and maybe the court could provide some guidance, that if we're going to go beyond asking page and line references and what was actually said, then we're not going to be able to lead them there. I can lead all day long. I can do that. But they can't.
I'm joining this because the statements that are being made, did he indicate that he joined in? Yes, he did. What did he say? I got in my car and pulled into the road. That's a problem. He's not saying he joined in. He just says, I got in my car, but because of the question. So we join in that motion. It is unfair characterization. I think the court should say, from this point forward, you just need to say, read line 1 or 2 through line 4 or 5, and leave it at that without characterizing it beyond what's actually said.
Gregory McMichael joins this motion as well.
So taking on the defense aren't going to be editorializing either, and they're just pointing to one page.
What did he say is the question, not did he say.
Maybe I shouldn't have. Just like, let me hear from the state. I do want to direct, we're doing it a little differently with this witness, and I think that may be where most of this objection seems to be coming from, but from the state.
Your Honor, on page 4 of the transcript, in terms of Mr. Goff's complaint that I used the word hollered, his client actually used the word hollered. His client said, so I started running towards my truck and I hollered at that point. I said, y'all got him? So that was a word from Mr. Bryan himself. And I understand that I didn't have excerpts for Officer Minshew's testimony, but it's essentially the transcript that the witness is reading from. It just helps as a visual aid for the jurors as well. So I went ahead and got excerpts from the transcript, but nothing has changed in terms of me adding or deleting anything.
Okay, here's what I heard. That, as counsel is aware, the struggle with doing the statements in this way is we're having witnesses testify to individual statements that aren't coming in because of these brutal issues and other discussions that the court was not privy to before we got into trial. So this is it's not the normal way, it's not, and it's permissible to do it this way. It just creates a lot of issues like this. What I think I heard, and I agree with, is what happened just a moment ago is the witness effectively summarized what he thought the statement was and then was asked again what the statement was, and the statement got presented on the screen. That's how I heard it. The objection to that is similar to objections I was getting about getting into the minds of the individual who's making the statement, and from my perspective, sort of mixing up true statements by individuals and what other people thought they may be saying. And that's been going round and round, I think, with a number of different witnesses here. And I'm trying to figure out how to bring this together in a nice bow to be clear. But where I'm going with it is, if we've got a witness up on the stand and he's putting up the defendant's statement, we need to ensure for the jury and for the clarity of the transcript what the defendant's statement is, as opposed to somebody else's interpretation. Y'all can argue whatever you want about those statements at some point later in the trial. And that's starting to be what's going on here. You'll have that opportunity. I'll give you that full opportunity at some point. But that's not what we're doing here. And so what I'd like to do is, instead of getting somebody to interpret the statement, if it exists in the transcript, present the statement. And if there is a rule of completeness issue, let's go ahead and put the complete statement out there if you believe that there's more to the statement than has been presented.
Yes, Your Honor. And if I may just add one thing, I know in the course of preparing for this trial and preparing for these statements to come in, we've spoken with the defense attorneys regarding, some statements will be specific quotes, while others will be generally, what did he say or what did he do? And they seem to agree with that.
Okay.
Am I not correct? Didn't we have that conversation?
So here's what I've discovered about all these agreements that were made before trial is the moment the evidence started coming, all these agreements, everyone says, "Oh, Your Honor, we're not holding everybody to the agreements we had before trial." I will point out, none of these agreements were presented to the court in writing. There's nothing that I have to enforce them or not enforce them. I had encouraged counsel to go ahead and agree to whatever could be agreed to. Apparently some of those agreements weren't as clear as counsel believed they were. There is very little the court can do about that. What I'm telling you, though, for clarity, given this way that we're presenting the evidence, I think it's only fair that the jury understand what the statements of the defendants actually were, if they're coming in this way. If there's some clarity that needs through completeness, the court's going to permit that, as I indicated in my previous rulings. But as far as editorializing on them, and that y'all are welcome to do that. You will have the facts and evidence. And again, in closing, if there are reasonable deductions that can be reached from that evidence, go ahead and argue them. We don't need to be arguing it all now.
I don't contest the state's need at some point to get into context. That's going to be an issue. And it may be, as the evidence develops, it becomes appropriate, even during the examination of this witness. Part of the problem is, I think there was an agreement by one or more of the McMichael defendants with respect to brutal issues in Mr. Bryan's statements. And I don't have a problem with brutal issues being addressed, but what's happening as you go through the red versus the blue versus the yellow is the McMichael defendants' agreements with respect to the brutal issues that my client doesn't have standing for do impact the rule of completeness, where we're parsing up the statements like, "I killed him," and leave out "in self-defense." That's where we're coming from. Over the break, I'll certainly do what I can to try and minimize those issues going forward. But I do think that I understand where the state's coming from with agreements on Bruton with co-counsel, but they can't resolve those issues without creating rule of completeness problems for Mr. Bryan. And I shouldn't have to spend hours going back through line by line, word by word, doing that, but we'll see.
Well, Judge, just, so the court's clear, whenever Mr. Lowry gets back on the stand,
If you could step closer to a microphone, please.
I have about 12 excerpts taken directly from the transcript that I intend to place right there, and they're right from the transcript, so it will be quotations.
Again, the court's instructed counsel how I'd like for this to proceed. If we can do it that way, then it's pretty clear to the court how we can move along. If we start deviating, then we'll see the reasons for deviating and whether we'll allow that to come in. All right. It is just about 12 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and recess until 1 o'clock for lunch. Anything from the state before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
From Travis McMichael.
No, Your Honor.
From Greg McMichael.
No, Your Honor.
From Mr. Bryan.
No, you are.
All right. We will see you at 1 o'clock. Thank you. We're in recess.